Our file structure has been set up, our catalogues have been prepared, so now we can import the first of our images. What I've done is to plug in a card reader and a media card from my camera. So I'm going to go to the button and click Import, and as soon as I do, Lightroom will discover that card and throw up the thumbnails that it contains. There they are. We can go down to the bottom right of the thumbnails here and change the size of them. While we're importing these, I'll just drag them down to be a bit smaller, and there you can see there's a number of images on the card, and they all come up with a tick, which means all of them are selected, and if I did nothing more, all of those would be transferred to my computer, which is in fact what I want to do. Now I suppose there's always going to be a time when we've got a card full of images that we don't want to yet bring onto our computer, but there may be the odd one we do. In that case, you can go down to the bottom of the thumbnail screen and choose to uncheck them all. Then you can either check just one of them or as many as you wish and just import those that you have ticked. If you have quite a number but not all of them, then a good tip is to select the first image and use the shift click method. If you hold the shift key and then move further down the list and click, you'll select every one of the images in between. Then if we touch one of these little boxes, we can tick a whole row or two of images in one go. In our case though, I want to bring all of these images on, so I'll go back and recheck. Now we're bringing images from our flashcard on the left via one of these options, but you'll notice I can only select two of those options. One is to copy these on in the Photoshop method as a digital negative file, or we could just keep them as the standard raw file. I'm going to keep mine exactly as they are, so the copy icon is the one for me. And we'll come back to the move and add a little bit later on. So now we need to move over to the file handling and all the options down here. I'm going to close them all up because I think it's going to be easier if we go down these one at a time, starting with the file handling. All of these options on the right are the options we want applied to the images as they're imported through Lightroom, through the catalogue and onto our hard drive. So we can start at the top with the building of previews. Now this is the standard setting, and as far as I'm aware it's the default setting, and I don't think there's much need to change that at all. I think if we had thumbnails coming up really slow, then perhaps we may choose minimal, but I'm going to stay with the standard, if that's the right way to say it. The next option I'm going to leave unticked. I'm led to believe that this is probably a good option to try if your images are stored on an external drive to your computer. Ours aren't, so I'll leave it unticked. If you want to make a backup of your images as you import them, this is the area where you need to go. We would need to tick this box, we would need to go to the drop down arrow here, choose a folder and just find a location where you want the images to be backed up to. It could be another part of your drive, a separate drive completely, or even an external one. But I usually do mine manually in another way, so I'm going to untick it on this occasion. So we'll close the file handling down and we'll open up the file renaming. Once again, an optional thing. Sometimes I have my images unnamed at all, but I must admit, ticking this box and using this template, and I'm going to let you go down these templates and try them yourself because there's so many of them, but one I quite like is the custom name and the original file number because it meets all of my needs. It enables me to put a custom name in this box here. So in this case here, I would put the location of where the images were shot. So clicking into the custom text, I can type in the location of where we were, Taree. Now although we've got a lot of options here, and I suggested you have a look at these at your leisure, you don't have to guess what they're going to actually provide for you. If you look down here, we get a pretty good sample, and you can see probably why I like this one, because it gives me the location of where the images were shot, but it also retains the original file name, which I find quite useful at times. And of course I already know the year we're working in because we're working on our 2014 catalogue, but in the future when I look back I'll also know that too. So let's close down the file renaming and move on to what we want to apply during the import. Now Lightroom gives us the opportunity to apply some settings as we import the images, and it has a number of presets, as you can see, with all these menus here, and once again they are too numerous to dwell on here. I think that's something you've got to have a look at yourself. Generally speaking though, if I'm bringing images onto the computer, I don't want to make any changes until I've had a good look at the images and decide what I want to do. So in my case, the develop settings would always stay at none, but there are options there. The next one, which is quite important, is metadata. Now, to save a bit of time, I've already set up a metadata panel, but I'll show you how I did it once I've selected it. If I go to the drop down menu, you can see there's one here that wouldn't normally be there, of course, by default. And when I select Beckham Digital, it appears there, and it will stay in that box until I decide to remove it. Now we can set this up by going to the drop down menu and choosing New. What I'll do here is select mine, which I've previously made, and you can see that if I open up all of these options that I chose nothing from the basics, nothing from the camera info, nothing there. Here, as you can see, copyright, well, I've put Beckham Digital, copyrighted. There's quite a number of words that go along with rights usage terms, and I think we'll take a look at those in a second or two, and I'll include them with these videos so you can use them if you wish, or adjust them, of course. Copyright info URL, that's been included. And again here, creator, creator's country, but not much else. After that, there's nothing else I want, so I clicked create, and it's as simple as that to create your own preset. And of course, you can make as many presets as you wish. So let me reselect that, seeing as it disappeared. And now we need to choose keywords for the images we're importing. We can add as many keywords as we like, and we can always add keywords later as well. This is just the keywords we're going to put in place when we import the images. I'm going to keep mine simple and just put the name of the place, Taree. But if I wanted to add another keyword, I would put in a comma and then add the second keyword. Let's close that down and look at the next option, because that's quite important now. You can see it appears to have defaulted automatically to the raw image folder. But just in case it didn't, let me just explain what we need to do. There we can see the G drive, of course, which we'd need to open up. You know we've got the two folders in here. We've got the finished images, which we'll come back and look at in a little while, and we've got our raw images. And when I open up the raw images folder, we get the 2014 folder that I created, and we know that the only thing that's in this folder at the moment is our catalogue. Now, because these images were shot in 2014, when we import them, Lightroom is automatically going to put them in a folder called 2014. So if I selected 2014 as the option, I would find there was another folder within that also called 2014. So I'm going to select raw images, because when it goes into the raw images folder to create a folder to fit these images in 2014, and there's one there, it won't create a second, it will place them within the one that's there. So I think we're more or less done, and all we need to do is click to import. Now we get the little message here that says it's importing files. We get to see them popping up as thumbnails, and also down the bottom in the film strip, and if you look up at the top left of the screen, you can see one of those boring little lines that we sometimes sit and watch that has to go from one side to the other. This isn't going to take too long because we don't have a large number of images. So I think on this occasion we'll stay with it and allow this to complete its business. Once it gets to the other end, you'll probably find it'll start again and maybe create the views for the thumbnails. We'll stop and see if that's going to be the case. And there it is, building the standard previews. So I'm going to stop my recording at this point and I'll pop back when it's done. So there we have our first batch of images within the Lightroom catalogue. We're going to come back and take a bit more of a detailed look on how we can browse and sort the images, because there's quite a lot that we can do within this section. But what I need to do is to import some more images to be able to demonstrate how the keywords and the search criteria works. I need to simulate the fact that we've got a few weeks of images shot and downloaded on our computer. So for the moment I'm going to go back to import and I'm going to import a second card of images. Exactly the same as the first, no difference. There you can see the images in question. Now this second batch is going to be perhaps a little easier than the first because much of what we set up there we're going to use again. But once again I suggest you go down from the top down just to be sure you've got everything until you become familiar with these panels. So I don't need to make any changes in the file handling at all. In the file renaming I do, because I need to change the custom text because we're no longer in Tari, we were actually in Nambucca. So I'll change it to the correct name and that's all we need to do there. Add during import, nothing we need to add there apart from the keyword again, Nambucca. Just checking to make sure it's picked up my metadata, which it has. Now the destination again, we've still got the raw image folder selected, so I'm going to click import and allow Lightroom to import these images. Now while this view images is completing, if you take a look at the bottom right corner of the thumbnails you'll notice there's a little tiny label, and if I hover over that all it says is this photo has keywords attached, which is quite useful to know from time to time. If we go over to the left hand side and just open up the catalogue so we can see the options here, when Lightroom brings in a new batch of images it always shows you those images and it's called previous import. So you can see here that it's just brought in 33 images and of course it adds up to 62 with the previous batch we did a few moments ago. And of course we can select to see all of the photographs, the previous import, and as we'll demonstrate later, any images or batch of images that we want, and it depends how many of the keywords you want to use. You could go down and find an individual image if you wanted to, but perhaps that's going just a little too far for our demo here. Now as you can see here I've brought you back into Windows Explorer. It's not a bad thing I don't think when we're new to a piece of software and we're carrying out a task which if it works okay we're going to be using for quite some time to, before we go too far, just take a look at the file structure and make sure what we think was going to happen actually has. So in my photography drive there's my raw images. There's the 2014 folder that I created myself, but inside there you can see I've got my raw catalogue, so it's safely stored with the images. There's the images from the 31st of May, and we can see that they're the ones labelled Tari, and the ones from the 6th of June which are labelled Nambucca. So everything seems to be working pretty well. Now in a few moments I'm going to take my leave and I'm going to import a number of other images as if we've been working in Lightroom for a number of months, so that when we come to look at the sorting of images we've got enough images there to demonstrate the processes. Just before we go, let's take another look at the keywords. If you wanted to add more keywords to these batch of images, let me suggest one or two. Look, we've got some here which I remember taking, and these are silhouettes of a little tiny hut right at the top there. You can see it better there. So if I wanted another keyword, but I only wanted the keyword to apply to those images, I'd use the shift-click method. I'd select the first of the images, hold the shift key, come to the last, then I would go to my keywording, and there in the keywords we can see already that it's recognizing the keyword we've applied already, Nambucca. So if I put a comma there and hope that I can spell silhouette, S-I-L-H-O-U-E-T-T-E, I hope I've got that right. Hit the enter key. So what we've done there is we've given all of the images the keyword Nambucca, but now in the future we can isolate those few images which are the silhouettes. And of course I suppose we could do the same with, oh, there's two more up there, so I could actually select those two. But now look, I've got silhouette as an option here, so if I click it, it's automatically put in for me. So once we make a keyword, there's every chance that we can use it again. I was about to say we've got another batch here which maybe would lend themselves to a different keyword, maybe sunset beach or water or beach or whatever. I think you've got to be a bit careful with some words, because if we put beach in, living where I live on the Sunshine Coast of Australia, if I typed beach into the search parameters, I could be up to my armpits in pictures. So perhaps we need to be a bit careful what we call them, but I think you get the idea. Just a few moments ago I said I was about to leave you while I imported a few more images into Lightroom so we could demonstrate the ability it has to search and find images for us, but something's cropped up which I think I'll just tack on the end here. This group of images you can see just completing here were taken in Coffs Harbour, so no changes to the import. My keyword tag is Coffs Harbour, and my renaming is to Coffs Harbour and the file name, or the original file number. But as you can see, if we scroll down, there's a number of seascapes, but there's also a number of birds. So what I could do in this instance is to highlight the first of those birds, hold the shift and highlight the last, and add some more key names. I mean, one of the obvious I think would be birds, but maybe even wildlife. Those are some of the options I think, although don't do what I've done just there and get the comma mixed up for a dot. Let's remove that. So there we've added extra keyword tags after we've imported the images, because I think these sort of things are going to happen from time to time, so we need to know how we can put keyword tags on that we've missed, and I'm sure as we go through the rest of the videos we'll be removing one or two keyword tags perhaps that we've got wrong. That's life, isn't it?